We'll welcome you back to Baseball Expats, and time for a bit of expat chat with a good friend of ours, friend of the show, as you say in this business, and, well, I guess very well could have been a baseball expat. We'll get into that at some point in this interview. And we welcome in broadcaster, podcaster, and taco truck influencer, our good friend, Tyler Maun. Tyler, good day, mate.
I was a baseball expat at one time. The 6 coolest months of my life, I think I was a baseball expat.
Very
good
well.
day to you, though. Sorry, I did not say good day. Good day to you.
You're the original baseball expat.
I was the OG. I was the OG baseball expat. The OG Australian Baseball League baseball expat. 15 years ago. It feels like it was
never left.
It was not as much. Yeah, no, that was a long time ago.
And for those of you wondering what the hell we're talking about, Tyler was brought from the United States to Australia to work in the inaugural season of the Australian Baseball League, which we'll talk about at some point during this chat. And really properly, Tyler, before we get into it, I think Eric and I just want to say a massive congratulations to you and the boys on your 500th episode on the show before the show. Hearing those words, did you ever think whenever you guys sort of started down that journey that we would do? I cannot imagine Eric and I ever doing 500 episodes together. I hope we do. We may kill each other before then. But did you ever think that you would get to that sort of a milestone on that show?
No, and I don't know what it really says about me or about Sam Dykstra that we've lasted 10 years in the same role. But no, man, it is very cool. It's I think one thing that's been really neat with the minor league baseball podcast is that over the last few years, I think we've done a better job of sort of embracing the fact that a lot of people really like it. I think for a long time for us, there was a lot of like, yeah, we do this little podcast and like it's sort of it's a side thing, mostly we're writing or we're doing, broadcast stuff or we're doing whatever. But the podcast just kind of always felt like this fun passion project. But really, I think ever since COVID, I think we've realized that a lot of people around the industry listen to it. A lot of people really like it. People who we really admire and respect listen to it and like it, which is baffling to me. But so that's been really cool, like hearing from people that, oh, hey, I listen to this, on my commute to work. I listen to this on flight. I listened to this one, when I was after I put my kids to sleep, whatever. Like that stuff has been really neat. I don't think we ever thought we'd make it 500. I don't know if we ever thought we'd make it 100. So the fact that we're a decade in, I'm not really sure what it says.
Well, and I think the reason why it works is because you, Ben, and Sam just all sort of have slightly different paths to getting to where you are, and you have quite different perspectives. There's a lot of variety in the show. You'll chat to minor league prospects, and then you'll just have absurd topics that you go through. You'll talk news. So I think in some ways, maybe by osmosis, what you guys have done in that podcast was the inspiration for us here on Baseball Expats, just to have a little bit of variety, to realize that there's a lot of stories out there that can be told in a different way. And I think largely, without knowing it, in some ways, you may have influenced what Eric and I are doing today.
I mean, that is super cool to hear, honestly. And I think it's a good point. Like we never tried to take it too seriously. I don't think we've ever, really looked at ourselves as being the super serious, intelligent baseball podcast. Like we try to, I think, more imbibe the spirit of minor league baseball, which is fun. There's been, over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of discussion over here about minor league baseball because John Oliver and Last Week Tonight have tackled minor league baseball over the last few weeks. And this past episode, he said, it's everything you love about baseball, but with extreme little sibling energy, which is true. Like that is minor league baseball, and that's fun. Like that's a good thing. And so I think we've always tried to stick to that. And we do sort of have different pathways. I mean, even the podcast itself has had a lot of different pathways. We used to be, very prospect focused, a lot more on-field stuff. And then, after the COVID season, when Major League Baseball took over the operations of minor league baseball, they merged our site, MILB.com, the former, still technically the official side of minor league baseball. They merged us in with MLB.com, with MLB Pipeline. And so the prospect coverage now kind of more sits on the MLB Pipeline podcast side. And we do a lot more of the business of baseball, minor league promotions and team names and identities and, funny theme nights and weird food items and fans and all that. And that's really cool because that's the stuff that really makes minor league baseball what it is. And yeah, Sam is a lot more of the granular, scouting baseball stuff. Benjamin Hill does the, most of the business reporting and all of that. And I kind of get to float between those worlds and be the host. I guess the reason that I ended up being the host was I was like the only person who had any on-air experience or knew how to like edit an audio file for when we were launching it for MILB.com back in the day. But man, it's turned into a cool little ecosystem to the point that we have a team is throwing a promotional night in our honor next month in New Jersey, which is very cool. Something that we always just threw out as a joke, and it's actually happening now. So it's been pretty fun.
What I do know is that, well, you know how I subscribe to the podcast, and you know how you get like your updates on your phone when a new one drops?
Yeah.
I do know that I was standing next to somebody who's more of a serious person. This was like the week after AYC's rolls here, like the day after we got back. And all of a sudden, a notification on my phone that just came up and said bathtub donkeys. And they were like, what do you listen to?
Binghamton.
What do you listen to? Because I think that was the episode. I'll have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure that was the episode title. It just said bathtub donkeys.
That's unreal.
Like,
what more needs to be said?
So good.
And then I'm in Australia.
You don't even need to listen to the episode.
It started a weird conversation too, because it was like, I'm in Australia. There weren't a baseball person. They're like, wait, so it's a baseball? What is a bathtub dog? What's a bath? Yeah,
what does that have to do with anything? Yeah. There's a lot of that.
Confusing one. There was a lot, but great episode, by the way. But I do love but that kind of, the titles kind of summarize what it's about too. So recommend anyone to listen to it.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's, it is not a subject that deserves to be taken that seriously. And we live in an all too serious world. And so when we can, have fun with stuff like that, it's very cool. And it does help you kind of escape a lot of the other noise in the world nowadays. And that's a cool thing for us too.
Go bathtub donkeys.
I need to get a bathtub donkeys hat. Well, look,
it's a pretty good logo.
We needed to butter you up with some niceties because now we're going to talk about the Colorado Rockies for a little while. We've been saying it for a couple of weeks on this podcast. You've been the subject of a few conversations that we've had on air in terms of just like, I wonder how Tyler's doing. We should probably do like a mental health checkup on a Colorado Rockies fan. At day of recording right now, they have a .160 winning percentage, 8 wins, 42 losses. They're 23 games back, albeit in the NL West of the Dodgers.
On May, what is the date today? May 22nd. They are 23 games back.
Can you just open the lid as somebody in this industry? In the city,
they
of
already
Denver.
lost. They lost today, by the way. They have already. It is. It's not yet 3:45 in the afternoon. They've already lost again.
Yeah. You just wake up and assume that the Colorado Rockies have taken another L, regardless of what time of the day it is. Can you just lift the lid on what it's like being a Denver sports fan and having to be forced to, in some ways, follow this team?
The way I've described it. Was that?
I was going to say, you've got the Avalanche and you've got the Nuggets. It can't be
That's the thing
bad.
Is the way that and that was kind of what I was teeing up. Like the way I've described it lately to people is like the Rockies are the one screw up child of in a family with 4 kids, like 3 very successful kids. And then that one kid who just cannot get it together. And, the other analogy that I've drawn for myself and for a lot of people who I know feel this way is like they are also the relative that you want to hang on to a relationship with and you want to love and you want to be part of because when they're doing well, they're so much fun to be around, but you have been so disappointed by them for the majority of their entire existence that you're like, I'm just not going to deal with this anymore. And that's the way it is. I mean, they are, I've said for the last several years, and for a long time, I got pushback from people on this, but I've said for the last several years that is a bottom 5 franchise in all of major American professional sports. And for a long time, people were like, no, there's no way. Look at how they draw. Look at how they do this. Look at how they do that. And yeah, the ballpark's beautiful and they get good attendance. In every other measure, you cannot name 5 worse franchises in professional sports in the United States. And that's really frustrating. And it's more frustrating these days because, Eric, to your point, the Avs won a Stanley Cup 3 years ago. The Nuggets won an NBA title 2 years ago. The Broncos have gone through, just a dumpster fire stretch as far as Broncos franchise history goes. And even they were back in the playoffs this past season. So the Rockies really just are like the team that not only can't get it figured out, but seems to be actively trying to not get it figured out.
They can't even fail poorly, right? Like, they can't get higher than the 10th overall pick next year because of the anti-tanking laws. And I don't even think they're trying to tank, but somehow they've ended up in the tanking territory.
Yeah, they because they lost over 100 games in each of the last 2 seasons, they went into the draft lottery. This is a similar circumstance that the White Sox faced last year. They are not allowed to pick with a lottery top 10 pick this coming the 2026 draft. So the Rockies are on pace to win 26 games this year, which would equal the amount of games that they won in the 60-game COVID season, by the way, and they can't pick higher than 10th. That's just, we have a phrase that we used to throw around on Rocky's Twitter back when Twitter was good and Rocky's Twitter was good, where like something would happen. And, the most perfect example of this, I'll elaborate on in a second, but the phrase was "that's so Rockies." We would just like hashtag "that's so Rockies." Like, "that's so Rockies" is like, for the Rockies bring up a young prospect named Clint Barmas, and Clint Barmas jumps into the major league fold, and he's hitting 400 into the month of May. He hit a walk-off home run off of Trevor Hoffman on opening day, just like a budding legend. And then Clint Barmas is carrying deer meat that Todd Helton had given him, frozen deer meat from a deer that Todd Helton had killed on a hunting trip, carrying it up the stairs in his apartment building, falls and breaks his collarbone, and missed like 6 weeks and was never the same player again. That is like the ultimate "that's so Rockies" kind of thing. And really most everything for the last 5 years has been a "that's so Rockies" moment. And this year is providing just so many of them.
We have a phrase like that in St. Louis as well, but it's like "that's so Cardinals" is when they go like 9 for 11 with runners in scoring position. So we have a similar phrase. It's a positive thing in St. Louis as opposed to a negative thing.
Hey, Rolsey.
It's fun. It's fun. It's good. It's good when your team's good.
Your team's been really bad the last several years. And like without an excuse. Like, the Cardinals are supposed to be good. You know what I mean?
They're bad,
so like, you jumped real quick back into being an arrogant Cardinals guy there.
Yeah, I think that's why it happened, right? Because the front office was like, "Look, we're basically a mid-tier town in terms of size, and people the amount of hate that we get relative to the size of our town seems to be a lot. So it's like, let's just bring it back and maybe not be good for a few years.
Okay.
And then, people, maybe they'll start to sympathize with the Cardinals, but I think we've learned that is completely out of the window.
Yeah,
Cardinals fans are all of a sudden insufferable again, me included.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's you put on display the reason why nobody's going to feel bad for you or identify.
Hey, Tyler, are you a bigger Nuggets fan or are you a bigger Avs fan? What means more to you? Which team?
Man, that is a great question. Since the Nuggets have been around longer, I feel like my inkling would be to say the Nuggets. But like, when I was in my formative sports years, the Nuggets were like the Rockies for a while. It's so funny because nowadays, like, you talk to young Nuggets fans, and I remember there was a post that went, somewhat viral on like Denver sports social media recently, in which somebody, obviously a very young Nuggets fan, posted like, what are the worst moments in Nuggets history? And it was like when Jamal Murray tore his ACL, when Anthony Carter couldn't get an inbound pass in against the Lakers in the 2009 Western Conference Finals, like all these like very recent things. And I was like, bro, there was a 2-year stretch when I was in middle school that the Nuggets won 25 games combined. The Nuggets went 11-71 when I was in 7th grade. So like, that's kind of the funny thing to me is now you look at the Nuggets, and the Nuggets are like a gold standard franchise in the NBA. The Nuggets were a laughing stock when I was a kid. And in that same time, the Rockies were pretty new. The Avalanche were like brand new, and the Avs won a Stanley Cup their first year in Denver, and then they won another one 5 years later, and they were in the playoffs every year. They're making it to the conference final. So it's funny because it's gone in these waves where one is bigger to me, one's more important to me, the other one sort of tails off. I focus more on this one, I focus more on that one. And now they're both so good at the same time. And when playoff season comes around, it's been better in years past, but the schedule has been really great in the last few years because it's like the Nuggets will play on a Monday, the Avs will play on Tuesday, the Nuggets play Wednesday, the Avs play Thursday. And so it's just, you are just locked in. So I don't know if I could pick because I'm like addicted to both of them nowadays.
All right. Well, then here's a would you rather question for you.
Okay.
So let's go back in time. So what? Joker was drafted in 2015-16. He's been 10 years in the NBA now and delivered a championship, right? Let's go back in time and pretend that the Nuggets had this MVP player and they never won a championship. That still hasn't happened. And in fact, they never make it out of the first round at all.
Okay.
They've gone 10 years. They get to the playoffs. They dominate the regular season, and they never make it out of the first round.
Okay.
Would you rather have what's more frustrating? What would be more frustrating to you as a fan? The Rockies or that?
Man, that is a good question. I think the Rockies would still be more frustrating because at least there's hope on the other side. You know, like the frustration, obviously,
which
it would
kills
be
you, though.
Yeah, which is true. And that would be hard to digest, but at least there is always, and you know, I know you're a Toronto guy, like, and my condolences with the Leafs, because that really, like, you just feel like at some point they're going to turn this corner, and that hope is always there. The thing that frustrates you so much about the Rockies is it's like, what is the point of you? You know what I mean? Like, why do you even exist? If like it's such a hassle to own this team and to try to be competitive and blah, like, why own the team in the first place? Why is this thing even around? You know what I mean? So that I think is frustrating, especially also because it feels like I could swing a dead cat and come up with a front office of people that I know that could put a team out there that would only win 26 games in a 162 game regular season. So like, that's a little infuriating also. So yeah, I think the frustration would still be on the Rocky side, but there is like a special brand of heartache with like, this team is so good. We should have had 5 championship parades by now. And you don't have any, or you only get one, or whatever it is, which I know is such a first world sports fan problem, but there is, I think as you grow older, and I turn 40 next month, you do realize that like these windows only come along so often. And, you know, when the Avs were a pretty middling team, like mid 2000s, 2010s, you know, when the Nuggets were just garbage when I was a kid, the Broncos going through this lean stretch over the last 10 years or so, you do realize like, oh, there's no guarantee that it comes back around, you know? And so you do try to cherish those moments. But I will say those, when the Avs got bounced in Game 7, and then when the Nuggets got bounced in Game 7, it doesn't really feel good.
I only bring that up because, obviously, well, I'm a big Leafs fan, and we had a big rant about that on the last pod.
Yeah.
But I would just like to add to another Leafs futility stat. The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Colorado Rockies. The Leafs, by the way, own a 9 straight season. They've made the playoffs 9 straight years. It's the longest in the NHL. They have as many playoff wins in the last 20 years, playoff series wins, as the Colorado Rockies.
I am not qualified for the amount of therapy sessions that I have run on this podcast in the last 2 months.
That hurts. That's why you can't.
I am not qualified.
That's why you can't have me on more than one episode, because it's just going to be nothing but therapy sessions.
Yeah, Eric's been the same for the last couple of weeks.
That is rough, and it's rough because like another reason why I've always made the argument that the Rockies are a bottom 5 franchise in all of sports is like they have no history either. Like, it's not the Pittsburgh Pirates people always bring up. It's like, yeah, but for a time, the Pirates were the franchise in baseball. The Cincinnati Reds were the franchise in baseball. you can't look at even like the history of a team. Like if I was a Leafs fan, I would still wear a t-shirt that has like the rings from Stanley Cup championship seasons. Right, exactly. Like there's at least something, even if it happened before you were born, there's at least something that you can hold on to as like, yeah, but my team did that at one time. Whereas with the Rockies, it's like, oh yeah, no.
Yeah,
none of that.
They made the World Series that one time, and it was almost felt fluky because they were terrible.
It was extremely fluky.
Like, we're going to win like 20 games in a row now and go to the World Series.
20 wins in 21 days. Yeah, that was, and I was at every home game in that stretch. Yeah.
How?
the luckiest run in the history of sports.
Pretty cool though.
It was. I will say that was the summer I graduated from college. I did not yet have a job. I went to every game that I could. We still had season tickets at that point. And there was nothing like that summer. There was not. And, I mean, that's not even the best team in Rockies franchise history, but that is, I mean, quite obviously that is the most memorable team in franchise history. And there are moments that, you kind of feel like define your life as a sports fan. And that summer was definitely among those.
Well, I'll put you on the spot. I mean, you talked about swinging a cat and putting together, jokingly, swinging a cat and putting together a front office that could do a better job or as good a job as the current front office is doing. What's the way forward for the Rockies? Is it to start spending, or is it to really beef up the developmental system? What is the way forward if you were going to do that, to swing the proverbial cat and put together a team?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I mean, there needs to be a top to bottom tear down and rebuild from the ground. And that means everything. The Rockies are a franchise that has never, it's kind of funny. I used to host a Rockies podcast back before I was, kind of more doing regular baseball media work. I mean, I guess I still was, but on a lower level, we used to do this Rockies podcast. It's kind of gone by the wayside, but we started that in 2014. And basically our thesis statement was like, the Rockies are not cheap. The Rockies have never been cheap. They actually spend fairly well given their station as a media market and, where they are in terms of MLB market size. They just spend money incredibly stupidly.
$27 million a year on Chris Bryant.
Exactly.
Stupidly.
And Chris Bryant is the example. But even before Chris Bryant, like there are just so many different examples that you look at throughout franchise history and you think like, what? They gave Wade Davis how much money as a closer? They signed Jake McGee for how much money? Like they, Daniel Murphy, Jose Reyes. There were just a lot of moves throughout franchise history that you look at and think like, oh, this is not a serious enterprise. This is not an organization that knows what it's doing or wants to evolve to be better at what it's doing. And the problem with the Rockies is they have an owner, a chairman in Dick Monfort, who is a tremendously loyal person. This is sort of the book on Dick Monfort. He's an extremely loyal person. He doesn't like firing people. He doesn't like moving people around. He doesn't like making big changes. And I think that is an honorable quality in a lot of arenas in life. Operating a professional sports franchise is not one of those arenas. The Rockies have never, since Dan O'Dowd in the early 2000s, the Rockies have never hired a general manager from outside the organization. They just promote from within. Jeff Bridich, their GM after Dan O'Dowd left, was the farm director. Jeff Bridich leaves, they appoint the amateur scouting director as general manager. If this guy is forced out or fired or leaves or whatever, Dick Monfort's son is the amateur scouting director now. It just is a franchise that operates as though it is still 1995 in virtually every way possible. The Rockies don't have a pitch modeling system for their pitchers to learn like, hey, here's what your stuff is doing. Here's what it does at Coors Field. Here's what it does on the road. They don't have the advanced analytical stuff for hitters. You're going into games with one arm tied behind your back because your guys do not have access to the same stuff that everybody you're playing against has access to and has had access to for a decade. They don't subscribe to any of that stuff. And the Rockies should be the crowning achievement of a baseball operations person's career. If you work in baseball ops, if you're in scouting, if you're in player development, if you're in, acquiring big league talent, whatever, one would think that you want to summit the most difficult mountain. Figuring out how to win in Denver, how to win at elevation, to win at Coors Field, to be able to carry that success over onto the road. You would think everyone in baseball would be climbing all over themselves to get a shot at that. Because if you can conquer that, there's nothing you can't do in baseball. And yet, they have an owner who has no interest in hiring anyone to do that, going outside of the organization to do any of that. And the franchise has turned from bad, but mostly anonymously bad, to like bad out loud now, and embarrassingly bad, to the point that, even nowadays, like, I'll see political writers dunking on the Rockies. Like, they've broken containment from the sports industry, and now they are a societal punchline. And that's embarrassing, and to be from Denver. I told this story on the one episode of the Rockies podcast we've done in like the last 2 years, which we did after they fired Bud Black a couple weeks ago. My wife and I were in Mexico, and a guy asked us where we were from, and I said, we're from Denver. And he said, oh, Rockies. And like rolled his eye, like a local guy in the state of Guerrero in Mexico. Like, that's what people know. If you had to do word association with people who know sports around the globe, and you said the New York Yankees, they would say championships. The Boston Red Sox, championship, whatever it is. The Colorado Rockies, they would say losing, or like nice ballpark or whatever. Like, that's their identity. And it would have to be a tear down to the studs rebuild, a complete organization-wide rebuild. And, they've just shown that that's never going to happen at least while Dick Monfort is running the show.
Question for you. Again, I'm going to put you in a scenario here. This time I'm going to put you in the eyes of you work for PETA. Okay. So what is the more egregious offense? Swinging that dead cat around, quite literally, like Rolsey was saying, or making that cat go to 162 games of a Colorado Rockies season in 2025.
100% the 162 games. Like, without a doubt. I don't even think a PETA person would get that upset about any other scenario if you're subjecting this poor cat to, which, by the way, being three guys who have all lived in Australia, I don't think swinging a dead cat is a phrase that's real commonplace down there.
I don't think it is either.
We're trying to make it as many times as we've used it in the last half hour. We're trying to make it a thing.
We're just introducing it to the masses.
Yeah.
It is kind of cool, though, that, there was that game versus the Padres a few weeks ago that obviously there was a lot of runs and not a lot the other way. But there was like 39,000 people there at the game. Like, it was pretty crazy. It's pretty cool that there's so many people that still go to the game, support it. Like, that's the most loyal fan base in sport, I think.
So, of those 39,000, I would venture a guess that 35,000 were either Padres fans or were they just there to get a drink. Because that's really what it is. The joke in Denver is that it's Denver's coolest outdoor bar. That's what Coors Field is, and it really is. It's a social location. It's not a place you can go to a Rockies game and struggle to find people wearing Rockies gear. Like, that's how bad it is. If you were to turn on a game over the last few days against the Phillies, it sounds like you're at Citizens Bank Park. Like, it's depressing. If you're somebody who is a cliche dyed in the wool Denver till I die type of person like me, just like a walking cliche, like that is if you take off like your objective, like, baseball writer reporter hat, and you put on like your I'm from Denver hat, like, that is an embarrassment. It is embarrassing to be a punchline that way, to talk to people overseas who know the only thing about your city that they know is that your baseball team sucks. Like, that's sad. And the thing that I think is really difficult for a lot of us is that this city has the ability to be an amazing baseball city. When the Rockies have been successful, the way fans show up is incredible, because the ballpark is worth it. And when the baseball is fun, it's so much fun. But yeah, that's the dual-edged sword right now is people look at, man, they still had 38,000 for a game that they lost 21-0. And that is true. And that, I think, is in large part why Dick Monfort feels like, hey, the model's working. And like, I'm still raking in money. We're still selling 35,000 tickets a game. What do I need to change? And so on the one hand, it's, you know, it's a great ballpark. I mean, it is even unbiased, or as unbiased as I can try to be. It's my favorite ballpark on the planet. It's my favorite place to be. But that's almost a death knell for the franchise, because they don't feel like they have to put any resources into making the team competitive, because they know it's a transient city, or people come here for vacation, or they're going to make I remember a few years ago, the Mets fan group, Seven Line Army, they made their 2018 or whatever it was road trip, Coors Field, and they bought up like 3 sections of seats. And so it's, it's the old adage of like, the money is the same shade of green no matter who's spending it. And that seems to be one of the things that's really holding them back, honestly. And that's a thing that hurts for somebody who has seen what it's like when it's local fans and when it's really cool and really good that way.
Well, I want to get into some minor league chat with you, and maybe this is a good transition. We had Jonathan Mayo.
We already were. I mean, we were talking about the Rockies.
As Spoon likes to call them, a 4A team, just above AAA. We had Jonathan Mayo on last week, and just talking like way too early draft stuff. And I asked him realistically, how far could Ethan Holiday fall in the draft? And he's saying, look, he won't get past 4 to the Colorado Rockies. He's not going to get past that spot. Do you think if the Rockies were to have Ethan Holiday fall to them, that would be something that Rockies fans could get excited about? I mean, you just talked about maybe the developmental system within the Colorado Rockies organization, not the best. So maybe for Ethan Holiday's future, it's maybe not the best pick. But do you think if he were to fall to 4 and the Rockies take him, that maybe that provides a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, potentially, with all of the Matt Holliday connections and everything and how much he meant to that city and the fans meant to him? Could that be something that maybe helps the franchise turn a corner?
Here's something that is really sad. The amount of people who I think would care enough about a draft pick for the Rockies to be that excited about it for longer than just like, oh, they picked Matt Holliday's son, that's cool. Like that pool of people is so small now.
Yeah.
And so for those people, I think, it would be pretty exciting. I mean, I think the Rockies have taken really interesting talent in the draft in recent years. And honestly, until the last 4 or 5 years, the Rockies were pretty good at getting that talent to the big leagues, developing that talent. That has somewhat fallen off. Their most recent top prospect, Chase Dollander, was just put on the IL today. He was the 9th overall pick in 2023, just went on the IL with right forearm tightness, which is always a terrifying diagnosis for a pitcher. Charlie Condon, who was the 3rd overall pick last year, the outfielder out of Georgia, people were really, really excited about because he's got an extremely loud power tool and a pretty good hit tool. Charlie Condon this year has been really struggling so far with health-wise, getting back into action after an injury he suffered last year. Really, really struggled last year in his debut professionally. So I think, yes, diehard Rockies fans would be really excited about Ethan Holiday. Obviously, he's an amazing talent. The Rockies would never let him go by, because there's one thing that the Rockies love more than like, hey, here's a good player. It's, hey, here's a good player who has a name that's recognizable to Rockies fans. But I don't think it's enough to really move the needle, especially if they're on the way to losing 125 games. And Ethan Holiday is not the type of guy who you're going to draft and have in the big leagues on opening day 2026, right. Probably not on opening day 2027. And that's always the difficult thing with a draft and development organization is you have to be able to sell a plan to people and say, we have to be patient with this for the next 3 to 5 years. And the Rockies at various times in franchise history have done that, but they are not doing it right now. I'll tell you that. And so that's it. They have burned off even the semi diehard fan is gone right now. Like you have to be a masochistic level of diehard to be hanging in with the Rockies right now. And there's not a lot of them.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's the tough spot that they're in, right? Do you draft for the now to get people excited? But at the same time, if you're not going to be competitive in the next 5 years, you've got to take young guys that you think you can develop. So it's a tough spot to be in.
And that's what it always should be for them. You know, I mean, they should be they should be the Tampa Bay Rays. They should be the Cleveland Guardians. But again, they have fallen off in their development. They're so far behind the times and everything else that it's just that's the big struggle for them right now. You looked at the 2024 White Sox, and it was like, this team is historically bad, but there seems to be a plan here. They're trying to rip this roster apart to get young players in, to build up that system, blah, blah. The Rockies don't have that right now. Like, the Rockies have some interesting minor league talent, but like, they are, I think it's Fangraphs has them as a top 10 minor league system. A lot of places have them rated as a bottom 10 minor league system. So there's not this wave of, the mid 2010s Astros or I know the Orioles are not having a good year this year, but the Orioles from a few years ago, there's not that wave of like, well, these guys are coming and they'll be here to save this team eventually. There's just not a lot of that right now. So that's another kind of scary thing, is it's like, where is the bottom with this team?
On a transition to minor league baseball. Now let's the Rockies, I feel your pain, Tyler. I really hope that they get good and win, and I will be the biggest cheerleader for them just because of you, I think. But you do keep your pulse on minor league baseball, obviously, and it's going to be a very broad statement I'm going to make right now. But if you're looking through the first, 6-7 weeks into the minor league season now, every minor league year seems to have something defining about it or something to get excited about. But these first 2 months so far, what has got you the most jonesed up, the most excited in terms of like, damn, this has been pretty cool story so far in the 2025 minor league year?
It's a really good question. I mean, there are, I think, years where we see themes of like, pitchers this year are just like the electricity of young pitching, or, the amount of like power corner bats that we have, or whatever it is. There have been a handful of guys this year who I think have made big time jumps that weren't necessarily on the radar coming into the season. I mean, the newest number 2, I'm on the MLB.com side, and so MLB Pipeline's number 2 prospect is Bubba Chandler in the Pirates organization, who made a really big jump in the midseason re-rank, as a lot of prospects have started to graduate off of that list. Somebody like Bubba Chandler being on the doorstep of joining Paul Skeens in a major league rotation, even though it's for the Pirates, a team that's really struggling, that's really exciting. Andrew Painter, the Phillies prospect, who a couple of years ago, when he was, I think, 19 years old, was in the running for a rotation spot before running into some injury issues and all that. Andrew Painter's back. He's kind of on the doorstep now. He's at AAA, and is a guy who I think could really play a role for a good Phillies team down the stretch. But one theme that I think is really exciting is there are these teams that for the last, in some cases, 15 years or so, we really haven't heard a whole lot about. And they are starting to get talent to the major leagues that is making these massive differences. And I'm talking especially about a team like the Detroit Tigers. Right now, the Tigers don't have a ton of guys who are, banging down the door, getting into the big leagues in their prospect ranks, because they've graduated all these dudes in recent years. And you look at the Spencer Turnbulls or the Riley Clarks or Tarek Skubals or whoever, those are all drafted and developed guys who have gone up through that system and now are making such a big impact that the reinforcements that could be coming for those teams, you don't have to rush them along. They've got 5 top 100 prospects right now, but with the exception of 1, all of them are at high A or lower. And that's kind of cool. I think you look at these teams that seem to be building sustainable things and realize, oh, they've got time to work with a lot of this really exciting young talent, because the really exciting young talent that they were working with in the previous chapter, all those guys are being successful right now at the major league level. And so I think that's really cool. The other thing that's interesting in minor league baseball right now is there are some different rule changes that we've seen in recent years. The automatic ball strike system that was implemented in spring training this year, we saw that tested out in the minors in the Arizona Fall League. We just this week, MILB announced that there will be a check swing challenge implementation in the Florida State League, which is pretty cool. That's something that was kind of pioneered in the Arizona Fall League last year. So it's interesting to see the way this sport continues to evolve, and minor league baseball being the testing ground for all that stuff is really cool. And yeah, I don't know if there is a singular theme this year that I would just jump out and grab the way that we have had in seasons past, but there are a lot of really cool things right now that I think are providing like 5 or 6 different really interesting storylines in the minors. I mean, guys like, Jesus Made, who's an 18-year-old prospect in the Brewers organization, who's a top 25 guy now overall, or a prospect in the Blue Jays system, Eric, after your own heart, Arjun Namala, who could be the first player of Indian descent to make it to the big leagues, and a guy who was a first-round pick for the Blue Jays. I mean, there are just some really, really, Travis Bazzana obviously is an incredibly cool story for a prospect status type of angle, and a guy who, if everything continues to go the way that it has gone in his development as not just a prospect professionally, but obviously as a collegiate player, I mean, we could be talking about Travis Bazzana in Cleveland theoretically by the end of this year. So there are just some really cool storylines right now. You start to learn, the more you pay attention to minor league baseball, just how close these guys really are. And there is a lot of really, really exciting young talent that is getting really close, even if they're only in high A or double A right now.
Just on the ABS stuff, you mentioned sort of what Major League Baseball was doing as part of spring training and the challenging system and all that. We had Cohen win on, what was it, a couple of weeks ago now, Eric, and the KBO is using the ABS for every pitch this season. And Cohen was sort of telling us about the way that it works. For them, it's kind of like PitchCom. The pitcher can hear it in his ear. He said when it's quiet, the fans can almost hear it coming from the pitcher's PitchCom. It's
interesting.
It's a crazy story listening to him tell it to us. But he was talking about how using it, but we asked him the question and thought that he was going to hate it as a pitcher, right? Because particularly with 2 strikes, getting things on the corners, inside, outside, is difficult because it's really impossible to sweep a ball around home plate. So as a pitcher, we were thinking, well, we're going to ask you about this and you're going to hate it. And what he said to us was, it's just made me change my approach with 2 strikes. That's all it's made me do. It's made me evolve as a pitcher. It's made me think a little bit more laterally about how I get a guy out. I'm going to need to throw something at swing and miss on 2 strikes because it's unlikely that I'm going to get a strikeout looking. I don't think there's any doubt that at some point in the near or distant future that Major League Baseball is going to go to a system like that. Will we see it adopted across the board in minor league, do you think, before it goes to the majors? I mean, it's odd that we saw it in spring training. I think there was some positives, some negatives from it. I know the American Association has done a lot of things like that in sort of cahoots with Major League Baseball. Do you think that we will see it maybe implemented across the board in AAA baseball, for instance, in a season in the near future before it is entirely adapted in all of Major League Baseball? Is that kind of the path that you see for the ABS in North America?
It's interesting because that is the way that things started with, like, the pitch clock, for example. Yeah. The pitch timer was first tried out in the Arizona Fall League and then was brought, I believe, to AAA and AA at the same time, and now is all the way through. I think, and I don't have this on any authority, this is just my own personal thought, I don't think that we'll see – the ABS system is a lot more expensive than to just, throw up a pitch timer clock. The equipment that you need and the programming stuff that you need for the ABS system, there are more cost hurdles, I think, than we would maybe expect for just the implementation of something that seems pretty simple. With that being said, I think, and we've seen it used in AAA. I did the AAA National Championship game last year for MLB Network, and just seeing guys step out, tap the helmet, and immediately it goes to the video board, and it's a 5-second review, and you've got your answer. It's so seamless. I love it. I think it's a great addition to the game. I think in spring training this year it was a great addition, and I think the players liked it. And again, this is just my personal theory. I think by testing it out in spring training, MLB is putting into players' heads, managers' heads, umpires' heads, like, hey, this can work and we can do it pretty seamlessly. We can roll this out at the big league level. It probably won't be an issue. I would tend to think it might just go that route. there is the possibility, and I think you hit it more closely, rather than seeing it go to the full scope of the minor leagues. Maybe we do see it at AAA first, or a AA and AAA. But I think the cost thing probably would not necessarily prevent it, but would make it a more gradual rollout in the minor leagues to go through all 4 levels. But I really like it, I'll be honest. And I like the fact that, and I just said this on the MILB podcast when we were talking about this new Tech Swing Challenge in the Florida State League. I like that we're in an era where Major League Baseball is open to change. And, there are a lot of things that I don't think Major League Baseball should change, but I like the fact that we're in an era where we can have these conversations, and you can test things out in the AFL. You can test them out in the Florida State League. You can test them wherever. And if it makes the game better, it makes the game better. And if it doesn't, then we don't do it anymore. Whereas I think when we were kids, even 15, 20 years ago, I don't think you had conversations the same way. I think there was this dichotomy of people who thought baseball is boring, I'm never going to watch it, it sucks. And people who thought baseball is perfect, it never needs to change. And now we find ourselves sort of in this middle lane, which I think is a good thing. I think all sports have to draw from that at times. And I like that Major League Baseball is open to that these days.
What do you think that Major League Baseball can learn overwhelmingly, I guess, from minor league baseball and all that it does the most? Like, we just talked about some of the rules and how it affects the game, but before the show, we were talking a little bit about the craze of banana ball and people going for that entertainment value. But what do you think MILB can teach Major League Baseball teams about the actual entertainment product of the game itself?
It's funny, when we were a separate entity, minor league baseball used to be run by this organization called the National Association of Professional Baseball Clubs. And it was technically its own company, its own thing. Minor league baseball was its own thing. After the coronavirus pandemic, that was essentially eliminated, and MILB's operations came under MLB. And I think for a long time, we were really worried that it was going to make minor league baseball too staid and too boring. And they were going to eliminate all the fun promotions, and you couldn't have a wacky logo or a crazy theme night. And to an extent, I think some of that maybe has come to pass, but certainly not what our worst case fears were. If anything, I think it's gone the other way. And I think MLB has looked at minor league baseball and thought, people are obsessed with this stuff. What makes this so great? When you look around at the wacky food items in Major League Baseball, or different promotional stuff, maybe it's not quite as in your face. You're not going to see a Major League team out there wearing SpongeBob jerseys. But they're still open to things that bring in different communities in baseball, which is really cool. I think one of the neatest things that MILB has done in recent years is the Copa de la Diversión, which is a community outreach program to engage with Hispanic communities, Latino communities across the country, and honor the roots of, if you are in the Tri-City region in Washington State, they play as the Viñeros in tribute to migrant laborers who pick the grapes for the wine industry. If you're in Eugene, Oregon, you play as the Monarchas, which is a tribute to the monarch butterfly, which is the international symbol for free migration. There are so many cool ways that minor league baseball teams have figured out how to honor their local communities. And I think major league teams are starting to do a good job of recognizing that and thinking hey, it doesn't just have to be bark in the park night. Why don't we go out and honor this group that has, played a big role in the history of baseball in this community? Or let's go out and engage with this organization that is, refurbishing youth fields or whatever it is. I think MLB has done a really good job of looking at what is making minor league baseball so successful, and trying to pick some of those ideas and adapt them for the major league side. I actually like the fact that when you go to a major league game, it's still about baseball. And maybe that makes me like an okay boomer kind of guy, but I like the fact that I know when I go to a minor league baseball game, there's going to be a lot of goofy, nonsensical stuff going on. I've worked in minor league baseball since 2009. Obviously, I love that. But I do love that when I go to a major league game, that stuff is way more of the sideline stuff than it is the main attraction. I think that's how it should be. You know, I don't want marching bands in the NFL. I don't want a student section in an NBA game. I like the fact that the professional level, you're there to see the greatest athletes in the world do their thing. Now, granted, you're watching some of the greatest athletes in the world in the minor leagues, but it's its own ecosystem. And I like that they still get to operate in kind of different ways like that. But MLB, to its credit, I think there has been a lot more that I feel like has gone from the MILB brain to the major league brain than vice versa since that transition. And I think that's a really cool and kind of a really unexpected thing.
Yeah, I'd never really thought about the connection between it because we talk about things that Major League Baseball can learn from minor league baseball, or that minor league baseball can be this testing ground for technology. But you start to talk about how the evolution of these alternate identities has sort of made its way through minor league baseball, and in some ways, Major League Baseball would have seen that works. Does that, influence City Connect jerseys for instance, right? So in some ways, there's kind of even though it may not be a direct correlation, I think Major League Baseball is able to look and see, okay, that's something that we haven't done that clearly fans are drawn to.
Right.
So maybe let's do it, but do it slightly differently. So I do think that we tend to think as minor league baseball as this testing ground for technology and baseball things. But in some ways, minor league baseball has been this cultural phenomenon.
Yes.
MLB has gone, well, maybe we've been too reserved in this space. Maybe an Arizona Diamondbacks jersey can be a complete shift from what people think an Arizona Diamondbacks jersey could be. Their City Connect jersey is A+++, by the way.
You just freeze for you.
Did we
too.
lose him?
But maybe Major League Baseball, Major League Baseball did get that in some way, shape, form, or fashion from minor league baseball.
Yeah, and I mean, I like to point out that minor league baseball is a testing ground for not just rules stuff and on-field stuff, but it really is. I mean, minor league baseball is like a weird theater performance creativity testing ground also. The amount of times, we've all worked around baseball for a long time and been in front offices and stuff. Some of my favorite memories in my time in minor league baseball were just times when we all sat in a team, office or conference room or a suite or whatever, and just tried to throw out goofy promotional ideas, and there are so many people whose careers got launched working in minor league baseball who have nothing to do with baseball now, but like, oh, I was a front office intern for the Reading Phillies in 1997, and we had fun doing XYZ, and I brought that to this community art center where I work now. Like, I think the sort of freedom of like the no bad ideas free fire of minor league baseball is so refreshing, especially in the sports landscape, where it's like, at times, and I was a moment ago saying like I like the fact that there's somewhat of a delineation between the top level professionals and maybe lower levels. There are times certainly when the professional level, the highest level, is just way too staid and way too boring. The whole like the culture of protecting the shield in the NFL and all of that like nonsense, like chill out. Don't take yourselves that seriously. I like that is totally absent in minor league baseball. And in minor league baseball, it really is all about like, hey, this is supposed to be fun. This is a sport. This is a night where people are going out with their families. They want it to be affordable, they want it to be memorable, and they want to have a good time. What can we do to provide that for them? That to me, that is the soul of minor league baseball. And I think Major League Baseball has the luxury of being able to look at those things and think like, okay, we're not going to do all of that. But Andrew, like you said, how can we take some of the best elements of that and fit it into our framework and what we do? And that's really cool. And again, it takes a reflexive industry or an industry that can be malleable to be able to look at those things and think, all right, I'm cool with changing up some stuff and trying to make this product better in X, Y, and Z fashion. How do we go about doing that? And I think baseball has found itself in a really cool era that way. I'm somebody who I hate people who do nothing but complain about baseball. People who like, and this goes for like the grouchy fans, but also like the old timey get off my lawn broadcasters who complain about like, Shohei Ohtani shouldn't be playing both ways. Back in my day, we would have drilled you for flipping your bat, blah, blah, blah. Like nobody cares. Sports are supposed to be fun. Let people have fun watching and playing sports. I think baseball is in the best era that it's been in my lifetime. And I like that baseball is not afraid of that now. It seems like baseball has become a lot less apologetic for what it is and a lot more embracing what it is nowadays. And that I find very cool. And I want all of that. I want all of that in baseball these days.
Well, and I think thinking about that, the fun, the atmosphere, the changing tide of baseball it's important, and it's important to give it context and not say that it's just so black and white. There is gray area. You can have change without it being upsetting to people. And I think it's a really good point, and I think one that should be brought up when these discussions can be had. You can evolve a game that hasn't had a major rule change in 100 years without completely ruining the game. But just to go back to minor league baseball, and before we let you go, question without notice: your favorite ever minor league baseball promotion that you were a part of? I'm going to guess it wasn't a Monday morning 10 a.m. screaming kids game. Probably not
a kids day game.
But is there one that sticks out in your head as being one of your favorites? At the Naturals, we used to have 50-cent Miller High Life nights.
Oh,
those were interesting for a different reason.
Dangerous night for me.
Those are probably the most memorable that I had working in minor league baseball. 50-cent Miller High Lives.
Some Miller High Life. I would have had a very good time heckling you in the radio booth.
I think most people did.
I think I have a couple. I used to work for the Myrtle Beach Pelicans, who were then the Class A advanced affiliate, first of the Atlanta Braves, and then my last season, the Texas Rangers. I think this was this would have been my second season there. I spent 3 years there. In 2010, the Winston-Salem Dash, they had been the Winston-Salem Warthogs. They were the Winston-Salem Dash. They came to town, and we hosted a salute to grammar night because the reason behind the team name, the Winston-Salem Dash, is Winston-Salem is two city names at one time that have the little line in between them. That line is not a dash. That line is a hyphen. That is a hyphenated name.
Shout out
Winston-Salem Dash, exactly. Shout out to the first hyphenated name in Major League history. The Winston-Salem Dash, they renamed themselves. They used to be the Warthogs. Amazing name, incredible logo. They should have stuck with that, but they're opening a new ballpark. They wanted a new identity. I get it. They went with the Dash as a tribute to the community of Winston-Salem, because the thing in between our name, that's where Winston-Salem lives, or some corporate jargon nonsense. And also, like, Dash, they wanted to, like, it's speedy. It's like a runner who dashes from first to second base. But it's a hyphen. That's not a dash. That is a hyphen. It's complete. All of that is nonsensical. So we did a salute to grammar night, in which we did like grammar related promotions in between innings. Our on-field host, Maggie Neal, I will never forget, Maggie wore a shirt that had 5 commas and then a chameleon on it for comma chameleon. And, we would have we'd put people up and be like, what's the proper punctuation for this? The line in the middle of Winston-Salem Dash is A dash B hyphen C semicolon, that kind of thing. I loved that. Also, being somebody who's just like a grammar dork anyway, I love that. One of my other favorites was in Altoona. I was in AA after, in my time in High A. I spent a season with the Pirates affiliate there. And we did, and a lot of teams have done this, but we did a what might have been night where the team that is named the Altoona Curve, which is in reference to a railroad section that was like a transformative technological advancement in the 1800s. They could have been named the Altoona Lake Monsters, because they are next door to an amusement park that now the name of, I think it's called Lakemont Park. But they there's always been like this running gag that the lake in the middle of the amusement park has like a Loch Ness monster in it. So they could have been the Lake Monsters. So we played as the Lake Monsters for a night. And buddy of mine, who was my he was the lead radio guy, I was the assistant, and we're still super close friends, Mike Passanisi. Mike and I all night, we had to call the team the Lake Monsters. We tried to come up with like goofy things that we would say on air if they were actually the Lake Monsters, like playing off of the name and trying to have fun with the broadcast like that. So that one I love too. And also because like we just got to have like a different uniform and a different logo and things like that. So I love that one. Those are two of my favorites. But I'm gonna have to do some more thinking on that, because I'm sure we had some other really good ones.
Didn't the Altoona Curve also do Awful Night for a while, where literally
Yes.
everything was awful? Like it was comfort bad. They had bad music, bad on-field games, and they just tried to literally make it
Just make it like the
awful,
most cringy, just like terribly cheesy stuff. And again, like that's what goes back to, that's so fun. And the fact that somebody just had this idea and was like, what if we just tried to do this? And a decision maker was like, yeah, let's go for that. I love that. You can't walk into your job at an accounting firm and be like, I don't know, what if we all just sent funny Rickroll videos to all of our clients and pretended like it was 2009? Like that doesn't fly anywhere else, but in minor league baseball, you get to do that. It's great.
They brought it back after COVID, and I remember reading about how they gave every fan, or like the first X amount of fans that walked through the gate, a team photo of their 2020 season. Yeah, why
what was
not?
the photo actually
it's so
of?
good.
Awful night. One of the best.
Awful night.
Rollsy, did we lose you again?
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
what is this?
He's back.
It's
What is this
it's
internet? He's got his ocean view and his internet doesn't work.
Yeah. It's my Starlink, and we can have a different discussion about that at a different time. Tyler, look, we could go on and on for hours. We definitely want to talk international baseball at some point later on in the year as we get closer to the U18 World Cup in Okinawa, and then obviously the World Baseball Classic coming up in 2026. But this has been a blast, brother. Really appreciate you jumping on with us. Know you're a busy dude. You're jet setting all over the United States. Looking forward to spending some time with you a little bit later on in the year. Looking forward to having you back on. But thanks for spending some time with us, man.
I can't wait. Anytime you guys need me, I would love to hop on, and we'll talk some international stuff. We'll try to pick out a good sake spot for September in Okinawa.
One last plug for the show before the show. One of your most recent episodes that I listened to had an Adelaide guy on the show in Braden Faustnot. So that was a pretty cool listen as well. So if there's any Giants fans listening out there, you can go listen to an interesting chat for sure.
Thanks, boys. This was a blast. Anytime you need me, I'd love to come back on. We'll do it again.
That's a good